going to talk to you now about the different divorce methodologies, or that is pathways. Different ways to get to the same end state, and that is to a dissolution of your marriage. What we're talking about is the different methods being litigation is one, another being mediation, and another being collaborative. Now, with respect to litigation, that's the most common of them. And it's just like you see in the movies or on television. That is, one spouse hires an attorney and they file what's called a divorce complaint. The other side hires an attorney and they respond. And then you go through your attorneys with respect to gathering and sharing and exchanging information, with respect to negotiation, and if necessary, to go to court to represent you. And that's the litigation model. It's important to understand that even the litigation model, though, less than 10% of the cases ever require you to go to court and have a trial in order to finalize your case. They're almost, even in litigation model, almost 90+% of the time resolved through negotiation. Another method is called mediation, and in that you represent yourselves, you and your spouse. You talk about the fact that you want to get divorced. You both agree on that, and then you agree to hire a neutral mediator. I've served in the role as a neutral mediator frequently. And you meet with the mediator who guides you in the conversation and helps you to move forward with what needs to be resolved, and helps produce compromises where it needs to be produced. And at the end of the day, you represent yourselves and you produce what a final settlement agreement through that methodology. Even in the mediation, sometimes the counsel or sometimes the clients will hire their own individual attorney. But in this type of mediation model, the attorneys don't come with you to the mediation. They're there. Those attorneys are something that's called review counsel. They're there for you to ask a few questions. Maybe you need some guidance on what you should be looking for, asking for. And they're also there to review the final documents later through your point of view to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And that's the mediation model. Another model is called the collaborative model. It's less popular in terms of market share, but it's also a very good methodology. The collaborative model is somewhat of a hybrid as between litigation and mediation, and that is the way it works is each party hires an attorney that's collaboratively trained. There's both myself and other attorneys at the McConnell Family Law Group are trained as collaborative attorneys. And it's a process where each of the parties are so committed to it being non-adversarial, that is, not going to court and producing things through negotiation and compromise, that they're willing to sign an agreement, a collaborative agreement that says, in the event that either side backs out of the process, then which you're free to do, but if you do so, then everybody has to start from scratch. The attorneys that are representing you now will not represent you in court later. So it's, in terms of carrots and sticks, that's the stick to keep people committed to the process. But when people start off committed to a non-adversarial process, and it's been our experience, far more likely than not, they're going to see it through to the end. Another part of the collaborative process is there's other team members that are part of the collaborative team, and that is, in addition to your collaboratively trained attorneys, there's going to be one or more team members. For example, you might have a collaboratively trained financial neutral who's either a CPA or a certified divorce financial analyst that can help in the case, and that person's role would be to gather the financial information and produce the financial affidavits, to provide advice in terms of settlement on when comparing a tax dollar that's in a 401k is different than a dollar in a house versus something that's in a brokerage account, for example. So that's the role of a financial neutral by and large. Sometimes, in some cases, particularly when there's children, we might add a mental health neutral. And it's been my experience that in cases where there are no children that we have a mental health neutral involved as well. And that person is there either to help produce parenting plans and teach the parents about co-parenting if there's children, or just helping them through the mental and the pathways, blocks, if you will, that in order to get through this very difficult process. So that's a collaborative model. Now there's pros and cons to each of these, and they're not what's right for you depends on your facts and circumstances, and it also involves what your spouse has to think about it. Mediation is the least expensive, so that's a pro for it, but it's also not for everybody, because some people, the spouse on their side either knows a lot more about the family finances than you do, or vice versa. or the personalities involved. Somebody doesn't feel like they can negotiate versus the other personality, and they want to have an attorney on their side, whether that's you or your spouse. So while mediation is less expensive, it's also not for everybody. The collaborative model, is a little bit more expensive than the litigation, certainly more expensive than the mediation model. It's a little bit on average more expensive than the litigation model. Now, I'm not talking about litigation where there is a trial, which is by far the most expensive, but most litigation models are a little bit less than the collaborative model. For obvious reasons, because there's these extra timekeepers in the collaborative model, but even then there's some cost savings in the collaborative model. But some people don't like the risk of having to lose their attorney halfway through the process, and it's just too much risk for them. And again, not only do you have a vote in this and what process is selected, but obviously your spouse has a vote in it as well. But again, there's pros and cons to each. What's best for you depends on your circumstances. Hope that you find this video helpful, as well as the other free information that we have on our website. And we hope that you can consider coming and meeting with us, talking to us about your particular case, and seeing how we can help you find peace through strength.